If you're wondering why you haven't heard from me for a while, it's because I've decided to live off the grid. The wilderness is my home now. I'm just kidding. Totally just kidding. No, I did not decide to live off the grid. The mountain isn't my home. I rarely go to the mountains, actually. I know, shame on me for living in Colorado. But I do have a good reason why I haven't made a video in a while. And that reason is because I've been working on a script. I love directing, I love cinematography and filmmaking in general. But the one aspect of filmmaking that I have a love-hate relationship is writing. Scripts take a lot of time. For me, this particular one has taken roughly 4 years to get it to the place that it is now. That's what I want to talk about in this video. Let's get into it. In my mind, a story is a form of communicating, a form of sending a message, relaying information from one mind to another, and usually done in an entertaining way that's going to leave the viewer with some sense of new discovery, at least the good stories. Ever since I was a kid, I wanted to tell stories. My parents got me a big VHS camera when I was 8 years old, and I'd run around making terrible home videos, none of which you can see. I have loved filmmaking since a young age and always desired to be a Hollywood movie director, whatever that looks like. My perspective on that has changed quite a bit, and now for me it's just about telling the best story that I can. So in early 2019, late 2018, after the production of my short film Return to Sender, I had this desire to write a feature film. And because I talked to God about everything, I talked to him about that, and I said, God, I want to write a feature. I want to make a feature. That was my request, I guess. I want to make a feature. And what he said to me was, if you want to make a feature, you have to write it first. And that was the encouragement, the boost I needed to actually step forward and write it. And with that, I just want to encourage you to have your reason why you want to write something, why you want to make a film, because that's going to be what actually drives you to finish it. And it doesn't have to be a big existential reason. It can literally just be because you want to write a feature. I mentioned that I made the short film Return to Sender, but I still consider myself an amateur writer. So I didn't know the basics or fundamentals of writing a script. I didn't know structure. I didn't know formatting. I didn't know any of that. So I did my research twofold. Half research was on how to write a screenplay, and also research into the world that my story was taking place in. There's some historical elements and things like that. So I'm just trying to gain information that I could to make the story as authentic as possible. When I decided to actually sit down and write the script, I approached it by what they call free writing, which is just writing what's on your head, write how you want it to flow, and it was great for getting just the general ideas out there and getting the flow out there. But what I quickly found out, probably about the 40-50 page mark, was I didn't really know where to move forward to get to the end point that I had in mind. I was stuck. And this is where I dove into learning about structure. There's a lot of terminology for what this story structure should be called. They're basically all the exact same. Structure did not reduce my creativity, it actually increased it. A great book I'd recommend is The Anatomy of Story by Truby. I'll have that linked in the description. It just gave me a broad overview of what a story is supposed to look like, not just related to scripts, but just stories in general. And then particularly for screenwriting, but also relates to general storytelling, is a website called Script Revolution by CJ Walley, I believe. He's the creator of that. And that was just the most encouraging, helpful bits of information that I've received, as well as a lot of practical things you can implement into your writing. After I finished writing the feature, which was not an easy task, probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do, I submitted it into the Stage 32 annual drama screenwriting contest. I placed second in the competition, which was a really cool accomplishment to have. Nothing came of that, but it was still an encouraging and affirming thing for me to know that I can actually do this. I can actually write a script, even though I'd never written one before. Following the completion of the script and the contest and things like that, I reached out to some friends and collaborators and asked for feedback on the story, and I had a lot of positive feedback as well as some criticism. This was my chance to really learn what to take and what to leave behind. From what I've seen by and large in filmmaking across the board, but particularly in screenwriting, is there's a lot of critics, a lot of this negative talk that can really wear you down. Things like you're never going to write a good first script, or your formatting and everything has to be pristine and perfect, or no one's going to look at your script or like your story unless it's perfect. All that stuff is garbage. People will always talk and want to talk down on your story and down on your writing and down on you, but really at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is create a good story. What I was trying to do is create a good story. There is good, helpful feedback that you should learn to differentiate from just the negative criticism. The easiest way, I think, to differentiate is take the advice that pertains to the story and eliminate any criticism that has to do with you personally as a writer, or simple mistakes like grammar and formatting details. Don't worry about that. So after the feedback I got, the main thing that I was hearing was that they loved the story, but they wanted more of it. They wanted more time with the characters, more time with the world. It was an incredibly hard decision to make at the time, but ultimately I decided to turn the feature into a series in order to do the story justice. It became more about the story than my ideal of having it as a feature, just to be able to direct a feature. And that's what started the next 2 years of work, writing and developing these characters in this world more, so that it could be delivered in the way that I wanted it to be delivered. I mentioned ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a filmmaker, and growing up and diving more into the filmmaking community and storytelling and directing and all that, I really started to cling onto this identity of myself as a filmmaker. So there came a point where I found myself being really frustrated and discouraged and unmotivated and ultimately just unsatisfied with my life and my career as a filmmaker. And I feel like I wasn't really getting anywhere. And it was at this really kind of low moment where God was able to reach out and speak to me. And He began to reveal to me how my identity is not to be tied to being a filmmaker, but it's to be tied to being His son. That gave me a renewed confidence and excitement for the craft of filmmaking, and it encouraged me to be able to pursue stories without fear of failure, without fear of trying to gain someone's approval, because none of that matters. It's a gift that I have from God to make stories, and to make stories well that glorify Him. Maybe not in the way that you're used to seeing it with the corny Christian films, but in a way that is real, it's raw and authentic. So once that was dealt with, I was able to step into filmmaking with a renewed confidence in knowing that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, in creating stories to inspire people, to give people hope, and to ultimately give glory to God in the process. Let's fast forward till just last year, 2021. I endeavored to write the pilot, but the way I approached it was from a different perspective of the world, and ultimately that led me to more rewrites, and that's what leads us to 2022. There's big plans for it, and there's a big purpose for it, and moving forward I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm excited to see how it develops. The title of my script is How Far We've Come, and if you'd like to read the first 10 pages of the pilot, there's a link in the description where you can go and check that out and let me know what you think. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope a little bit of what I shared was encouraging. Some of the videos coming up, I'm going to be talking more about 16mm film and filmmaking in general. I have a music video coming up in a short film that I want to share some behind the scenes and things like that with. So if you want to stay updated for that, please like and subscribe. Again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Peace.